So we're jumping back into the testimony of Lisa Allen now to the Post Office Horizon IT inquiry, and it seems an issue with scratch cards in the case against Suzanne Palmer, who is a sub-postmistress at a post office, reveals potential issues with Horizon that are missed by the investigation team, where she says that she has lots of problems balancing. Up until this point, it tended to be smaller amounts, £100 up, £100 down. They tended to resolve quite quickly, which is apparently quite a common error in retail businesses when counting cash, counting stock, and mistakes made one week and corrected the next week. But then there's suddenly a shocking error notice sent for £2,500 of scratch card losses, apparently. And Suzanne Palmer is struggling to understand how that is even possible. And Lisa Allen, who's been quite candid so far in terms of her explanations, saying she wasn't aware of any Horizon reliability issues, and the investigation seemed to focus on just the scratch cards, which is obviously the claim they were bringing against the sub-postmaster, but misses the fact that actually what the sub-postmistress is reporting is that she is regularly facing balancing issues with the system. Let's see how she explains it and jump into the post office inquiry.
Where someone was attributing shortfalls to a problem with the Horizon system, did you, as a matter of course, check if there was any history of problems with the Horizon system being reported by the relevant branch?
We would have obtained the call logs from the National Business, the NBSC, and from the Horizon Service Help Desk.
See, they were always got, and from what we've heard, apparently, it would seem that they weren't chargeable to the post office, so they were always obtained. So if it was easy to grab the call logs, why wasn't it just easy for them to provide the ARQ data from Fujitsu for free as well?
Would you have done that as a matter of course in every case?
I believe so.
Even at the stage of an initial investigation?
Possibly not at the initial investigation, obviously depending on the circumstances.
Was there any one team within the post office of which an inquiry could be made about whether there was a history of reporting of problems with the Horizon system, bearing in mind that there were different relevant helplines?
The sub-postmaster should always have reported any issues into the NBSC, so any issues that are identified should have been recorded at that point.
And indeed, it seems like in many cases that we heard of, they were reported to the Horizon Help Desk. One of the problems they seem to have come up against is they weren't really sure necessarily all the time, not being technical experts, whether to use the Horizon Help Desk or the NBSC helpline. But, if they're retrieving both, nothing should have fallen through the cracks, and we've not heard any suggestion that sub-postmasters weren't reporting in these cases the issues that they were having historically.
I'd like to turn, please, to your involvement in the criminal investigation and prosecution of Suzanne Palmer. You deal with your involvement in the case from paragraph 84 of your statement. Is it right that you first became involved following an audit of Mrs. Palmer's branch on the 3rd of February 2006, which recorded an apparent shortage in the branch of £14,700?
Yes.
And you say you would have attended the branch that day and spoken to Mrs. Palmer?
I believe so, yes.
And made arrangements for an interview under caution to take place on the 6th of February 2006?
Yes.
Is it right that Lester Cheen acted as second officer in the case for the purposes of that interview?
He did.
Could we have on screen, please, paragraph 90 of Ms. Allen's statement? That is page 26. And you say here, I do not recall specifically any issues relating to the reliability of the Horizon system. I have considered Doc POL 3053009, which is the record of tape-recorded interview. And Mrs. Palmer does comment within the interview, tape 1, on the system going down and causing a loss in which she repaid, and some other issues where the system is offline. I do not recall whether this issue was recorded on any help desk logs, and I am unable to recall if further inquiries were made. So although you do not now recall Horizon issues being raised by Mrs. Palmer, you accept, do you, that looking at the record of taped interview, she did raise Horizon issues in interview with you?
I think she raised one issue in relation to the system going down in August 2005, and she referred another part of the interview to the losses being £100 up, £100 down, which I took to mean that 1 week she was £100 over and the next week she was £100 short, which could have been as a result of maybe not counting the cash properly. As an ex-counter clerk, it happened to me, so that was my understanding of it.
If we could look, please, at the transcript of that first tape from the interview, which took place on the 6th of February 2006. The document references POL 30/69058. Mrs. Palmer declined to have a solicitor or a friend present, is that right?
That's correct.
Could we go, please, to page 7 of this document? And about 2/3 of the way down the page, moderator 1, is that you, where we see moderator 1 in the transcript? We have moderator 1 and moderator 2.
Yes, I think that's me, yes.
And you refer to some sheets which Mrs. Palmer had given you on Friday.
Yes.
That was the day of the audit, was it?
I believe so.
And Mrs. Palmer says, OK, so the cash is this. And you say, right, if I could just, for the purpose of the tape, explain these are A4 sheets of paper. They're listed from Thursday to Wednesday. And then we've got a breakdown of all the notes and coin. It's written in pencil. And there are, going over the page, please.
So there seems to be some manual side record being kept at the point where there's some suspicion about what's happening, where is this missing money going, which is what some people have suggested previously.
And Suzanne Palmer says, they're just as we do them every evening. The top here is scratch cards. You say you're putting S&M scratch cards. Mrs. Palmer says, because they sent me bundles of error notices that they asked me to go through, and they said that they needed them put, and I never agreed with them. I phoned several 100 million times. Well, no, 8. And you say, so on this particular sheet, which it's not data or anything, you're pointing to, that is scratch cards, Mrs. Palmer says. You say scratch cards, and it says £2,500. Answer, yes, that was an error note, and they told me I had to put them through. I didn't agree with them, but she said they had to go through the system. So I just wrote them as odds because I wanted somebody to come and sort it out with me. But that's been going on a little while. Just pausing there, Mrs. Palmer was telling you that she had noted at the time on the records that she disagreed with the error notices she was receiving, and she wanted someone to come and sort it out for her, wasn't she?
Yes.
And then you ask, how long has that been going on? And she says, I can't think, because I haven't been in the post office. I can't think how far it went back. Has it gone months or weeks? Yes, months. Months. And Mrs. Palmer says what they were error notices. They said that they had been activated. Then they sent me reams of paper and I tried to sort it out. I tried to ring them several times, but obviously they're only there 9 until 5 and I'm in the post office. I mean, I've got all... Sorry. And she says, I can't believe this, sorry. So I just wrote it like, oh, well, it's written every time. It's all... So have you brought the error notices to account? Is that what you've done, is your question? The reply, I've brought them to account because they've told me to. There was no question, so I just put them through. But there is nobody to contact now. When Nick Kerr came, he's the guy. I used to speak to Deirdre South. She was there. But then they said she doesn't deal with that anymore. There is actually nobody. You have to dial through to you moderated to, is that Mr. Cheen?
Yeah.
Helpline, and you say helpline at the FBC. What does FBC stand for?
I think that should be MBSC.
And the response, yes, then they couldn't help me. Then when the post office was closed for a week, we had no online, no anything, and I kept saying to them, you know, I need some help here. Nobody did anything. I couldn't get anybody down to come and see me. I mean, there is a loss that week, which obviously I put in, but they've never explained to me what happened there. You know, I feel a bit, that's why it's there. The 2,500 is cash that I put in.
I mean, and that's the heartbreaking aspect, isn't it? These people are begging, so Suzanne Palmer in this case, another person begging for help. So they obviously want this to be made right, to find out what's going on, and it's just falling on deaf ears, largely by the sounds of things from their accounts from the time.
Right, so this is £2,500, this is scratch cards that you've talked to account, and you're basically carrying that as a cash figure because you've not put the £2,500 cash into account for the error notice. Suzanne Palmer says no. So Mrs. Palmer was reporting to you, wasn't she, that she was experiencing unexplained losses and that she had sought help from the helpline at the time.
She'd been sent transaction corrections for scratch cards that she couldn't understand and didn't accept.